Okay, so following up on the R Markdown video, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can create a journal article, so a submission ready article in using R Markdown, because somebody asked about this in class. So I just want to give you a quick tutorial on how to create an American Psychological Association APA formatted document and the advantages of doing this in R Markdown. So let me just first fire up my RStudio. Then I'm going to share my screen. Right, so let me just get this going. Right, so we're looking at my RStudio screen right now. So the starting point for creating a journal submission ready document is to first install a package in RStudio, or sorry, in R. That package is called Papaya. I guess this must have something to do with the APA. The APA in Papaya has to do with the APA format. Well, that's if you type Papaya, you're gonna get Papayas, right? So let's try R Markdown. Okay. Right, so here it is. So this package by Frederick Aust, he was the main developer of this package. It produces APA style documents in R Markdown. So what you have to first do is you have to first install Papaya, right? So you have to go to Tools, Install Packages. Let me see if I can do this. I've already got it installed, so I don't know what will happen when I do this. So let's try installing it. Okay, so I just reinstalled Papaya. And what will happen now is that if I go to new file, and if I choose R Markdown, you may have to restart RStudio. Maybe I'm not sure, but because I already have everything installed, probably I will see this right away. If I click on R Markdown now, it shows me several possibilities. So there's a document possibility, a presentation possibility. This is the presentation format that I'm using for my R introduction, okay? But here under templates, if I click on templates, I'm going to see a bunch of different templates that I could use. And one of them that you will find is here, APA style manuscript, 6th edition. Okay, so the 6th edition of the American Psychological Association manual, which lays out all the rules, that they set for what a document, journal article submission needs to look like. All this is laid out in their manual. I hope everybody knows what I'm talking about here, right? So let me show you. So there's like an APA manual, 6th edition, that is published by the American Psychological Association. And what they do is it's a style file. Like they tell you this publication manual, they tell you what the conventions are for articles that you might submit in APA format. And APA format is pretty much the standard format in both in psychology and in psycholinguistic journals like the Journal of Memory and Language and Cognition and so on. So you don't actually need to, read this entire book. You can see summaries of it online. You can find some summaries which explain what the conventions are. But what we have here, what I just did is that I just created template from the Papaya package that allows me to prepare an article that will turn up in APF format once I compile it, right? So this is actually, this should look familiar to everyone. This is just the header, of the R Markdown format up to here, up to line 59, from 1 to 59. That's the entire header that determines the shape of the APA formatted article that we will have. So there's lots of details here. This should be self-explanatory. Like you have title, short title. In general articles, there's always a title, and there's also a short title that shows up on the header on each page. So that's what this short title will do. Then you can write down, the first, second author, email addresses and the corresponding author. Whether the first author is the corresponding author, that's usually the case. And the affiliation is given an index, as you will see in a moment when I write down everything, when I compile everything. And so, and then you can also summarize who did what. You have to also have this credit, statement in many journal articles where each author's contributions are laid out, and so you know who did what, right? Um, right. So, and these are the affiliation IDs and so on. So you can have more than one author, of course, and you would just keep repeating, for each author, you would have this information, and I'm not very sure actually how one does this for multiple authors, but I'm sure I can figure it out if necessary. Okay, so let's do this. So then you always have an author note in a journal article, and that's where you write down, your department affiliation and stuff like that. Any other information that relates to the author note, like the email address and so on for contacting the first author. And then comes the abstract, okay, in a journal article. So you write the abstract here. This is the syntax for it. You can see the syntax. The beginning of the abstract is marked by a vertical line. And this is a comment. This part is a comment that will not be, that will not show up in the paper at all, okay? So you can write any comments in this format. And then keywords will go here, and the word count can go here. So you can compute the word count. There are different ways of doing this. I think they print out the word count when you compile the file, as you will see. And then you can decide whether you want to put the figures inside the text or at the end of the paper. So floats in text, no, means that the figures will go to the end of the paper. If you type yes, they will go to the beginning. Do you want line numbers on each line? Some journal articles, journal submission formats require that. I hate it, so I just say no, but you can put it in there. If you want to mark the paper as a draft, you would just change this to yes. I'll just show you what happens when you do that. Mask, I've forgotten what that is, but you can look up the documentation, right? You can look up the, where is it, the papaya thing. This papaya documentation you must, refer to if you want to know what's going on and what you need to do for particular things, like if you don't know what mask is, right? So in general, you have to get used to just looking up information, okay? Because I can't tell you every single thing, every single parameter setting in every single situation. Often you'll have to look up information. So just go ahead and do that, okay? Hey, what happens if I make this full screen here? Right. In any case, so let me go on. So you can also have a list of tables and lists of footnotes. List of footnotes I've never actually seen in a journal article, but you sometimes require table lists and figure lists and so on. So you can say yes here to get a list of tables and figures, which you can then, upload when you're submitting your paper. Now, class option, you can decide between manual, document, and journal. These are the three options, and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so right now I'll just keep it on sorry, not manual, manuscript, right? So this is manuscript. So let's have that, and this is the output. It's going to be in APA 6th edition format. All right, so let me just compile this file and show you what it looks like. Okay, first of all, I'm going to compile this file. I have to save it first, so I'm going to call it example papaya, right? And I'll store it in my general directory where I've been storing this semester's materials. Right, so I'm gonna put it here, and so let's run the compilation now. Did it work? Sorry, let me do it again. Right. So now what happened is that the file compiled, and now you'll have a PDF file. It also showed you, if you go to render, this was the console, it throws you into the console after the compilation is done. But in the render section, it tells you how many words are there in the text body and how many words are in the reference section and so on. And I don't know what these warnings are, but it says there's an output file now, example papaya PDF. So let's go and look at that file. Okay. So where is it? Sorry, teaching. Yeah, right. So we go here. Under temporary. So here's my papaya file, which I just compiled. So this article, this PDF file now contains the running head, the main title, first author, etc. All this information is now available here, and it's nicely formatted, ready for submission, right? And you can see that the result of the abstract that you had written shows up here in the correct location. Then the article begins with whatever the section headers are, and um, the end of the article are the references. So these were cited um, in the RMD file, in the papaya file, and they're showing up as references already formatted. So I'm going to show you a bit more about how you can use your own references file to add references into this PDF. But first, I want to show you what happens when I change some parameter settings here. Okay, so instead of having so now you see the advantage, of using Papaya and this kind of markdown format. If I want to change this to document format, watch what happens, right? So if you look at the paper again, the format of the paper now looks like a real journal article, right? This is something, if I were to write a paper in Papaya, I would, if I were to put up a preprint on SciArchive or OSF or something, it's very common to put up one's preprints online even before the paper is published. So I'll show you. If you go to my home page, let's go to papers, and the latest paper that we have is this one here. And this paper has been accepted, but it's not published yet. So what I've got here is a link to an osf.io archive. So this is a public repository where you can post preprints, right? And so I've got this preprint that you're seeing here. This happens to be written in LaTeX, pure LaTeX, because the first author preferred to do that, which is okay. But this could have been written in Papaya. It would look pretty much the same as I've just shown you, This is what the Papaya document looks like. And then I would post this on OSF, and you can see that even before the paper's been published, a lot of people have been downloading this paper and people have viewed it and so on. So the awareness about the work is enhanced if you put up your unpublished papers as preprints online. Okay, so this can be useful for the field to see the latest research that's coming out. So anyway, so what I wanted to show you is how the format changes depending on how you set up the class option here. If I change it to journal, what should happen is I should get a two-column format of the type that you will see in published articles, right? So there's a two-column format now, right? So you can change the look and feel of this thing. And are there any figures in this? No, there are no figures here, but that's if I had figures, then the floats in text, yes or no, would determine whether the figure shows up at the end or figures and tables, whether they show up in text or at the end of the text, the main text of the paper. So some journals require the figures and tables to be at the end of the paper. So you can flip that you can change that. If I say no, then all the figures and tables will end up at the end of the paper. So that's one example, one important thing that I wanted to mention about Papaya, which demonstrates the flexibility of this tool. Um, what else did I want to show you? Right. So one other thing I wanted to show you is um, if I want to have my own bibliography file. Okay, so this is the one of the big advantages of using LaTeX style, um, formatting is that if I want to access my own collection of references, okay, so bibcleaned is my own references, and this is actually sitting in the same directory where the current file is, right? So the current file is sitting under teaching winter 24 stats 1 temporary. So let's go there. Let's go to this directory, and you will see here that let me just reorder this alphabetically. Here, I've got bib cleaned. This is my file, right? So this file contains all my references that I've been using since the beginning of time, since 1997. This file has existed on my computers, and I've been just adding more and more references here. So suppose I want to cite the Fisher paper, okay? Fundamental tools for developing likelihood functions within blah, 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 right? This Fisher paper. So what would I do? I would go to I've changed my bibliography file here, right? So I'm going to be using this file. And if I go into the text, let's go to the very beginning here, right? So, right, so we can say something like this, introduction, right? Introduction, right? So I could say this is uh, this is the following discussion is based on the presentation in, and now I just put in the link to the key for that paper that's sitting in my bibliography file. So in my bibliography file, the bib cleaned file, I have an article type here with a particular key for that article specification and in this doc in this brackets, inside the brackets, I've got all the details about the journal article that I'm about to cite. So the way we store each citation in this file is by specifying the type of document it is. It could be an article, it could be a book, So for example, there's a book, right? A book like this would have a book format here. If it is an unpublished article, then I would have an unpublished, type here. And each of these entries has got some key that I'm going to use in the API, in the R Markdown file for generating the citation. So what will happen is that R Markdown will have this key, right? So I've put this key here. When I compile this document, R Markdown will look up the bibclean file, right? The file that contains the bibliography, and it knows where to look because I specified the location, right? In the current working directory, I've got this file. So it will look up this file, look up the specific key that refers to that article. So in this particular case, the Fisher article, and put that article reference at the end sorry, at the end of the article. So the advantage of using this LaTeX style formatting is that you just have a master bibliography file and you just use the key for the citation that you want to put into your paper and just use this @ symbol to reference that paper. Okay, so let me try this out and see what happens. Seems to have worked. So let's go back to the article, the PDF format, and let's see if the article is cited. And there it is. You see that? So the article is cited there now, and here, because I use the at symbol, it does an in-text citation. So there are two kinds of, citations that one uses in articles. One is when you're actually using the author names inside the text as part of the text. So when I want to say the following discussion is oh, sorry, it's not even a grammatical sentence. Let me just fix that. The following discussion is based on the presentation in a particular article. So I cite it without brackets here, right? So the way to do that is in APA format is to actually name the authors. Okay? So if I in if I wanted to, if I wanted to write the text with the author names in parentheses, I would write something. Um, um, So if suppose I was going to write something like this, right? In previously published work or something like that. Now I'm not citing the authors in text. Okay, so in that case, I would want to put them in parentheses. So in R Markdown format, the parenthetical text citation is done with square brackets. Now, watch what happens when I compile this file. And let's go back to the PDF. Now you'll see there are two different kinds of citations here. So the first one is an in-text citation, and the second one is in parentheses, right? So these are two typical ways in which you can cite articles. So that's the details you'll see in the documentation. Where is it? The Papaya documentation. So you can look up all the information on how different citation types work and so on. Okay, you can do some customizations there as you need, if you want to. So that's a really big advantage, of this approach. So normally when I'm working on a paper, I just have it in doc format because it's pretty easy to read, right? And so let me add let me add a figure. So now I've changed the format to a format that I find easy to work with. So let me just add a figure here just as a demonstration. So let's say I've got data analysis, right? So here I'm going to create an R code chunk, just like I showed you earlier, right? 3 backquotes and 3 backquotes, begin and end a chunk. R inside the curly braces is specifying that we are about to write R code. And so I could draw a plot here, just something stupid right now, just as a demonstration. And so if I were to now create a figure, it should show up in the paper, right? It shows up in the paper in location here. And notice that I don't see any code here. I don't see the plot code here. And the reason for that is that by default, the code is switched off. In a paper, you don't want to show your code. You just want to show the results of your analysis. And so this is very convenient because whatever shows up, whatever is in this plot is going to be dynamically generated based on the analysis that you have done. So that's a huge advantage when you're working, when you're writing the paper. So what else can I show you that's really important here? Right, and so as I mentioned, the word count is generally required in papers, so they want to know what the word count was. But here, right, this X, you will have to replace this manually. Unfortunately, when you've done the compilation, it tells you that the number of words in the text body are 91. The number of words in the reference are never relevant in a journal article. So I would just type 91 or something like that, right? Over here. So in this particular case, right? So this is a good example of how you can set up your paper and publish it. And so if I were to move let me see if this works. Okay, so I just want to try to move the figure to the end of the paper. Floats in text. Um, Wait. What happened here? There should have been, if I typed yes. Mm, maybe I have to have this in the submission format. So journal articles have to be submitted in this manuscript format and not in the document format. So maybe that's where all the movement of the figures happen. So what I've done is I've asked the figures to be in text right now. But if I change this to no and try to compile it, what should happen is that the figures should go to the end of the document. Let's see if that actually happens. Right? So this is the submission format, that we have in journal articles. So what should happen now is that, yeah, that the figure is now at the, oh no, that's not what's happening. Okay, I'm pretty surprised that the figure is actually showing up in text here. So, okay, I'm not sure, these details I'm not really sure about what happened here. The reason I'm surprised by all this is that I actually always have the figures in the text because I really hate it when I'm reading a paper or reviewing a paper. I hate it if the figures at the end of the paper, right? If you're reading a 100-page paper and the figures are all at the end, I have to keep going back and forth to relate the text to the figures. So what I do is when I submit papers to journals, well, actually I rarely submit papers to journals because my students or postdocs do that nowadays. But when I used to, I would have the figures in the text itself because then you can see right away what, you know, the figures telling you relative to what you're reading in the text. So basically, that's how you set up your APA format. If you don't want to use R Markdown, you want to write a pure LaTeX document, of course you can do that. But the disadvantage there would be that every time you create some figure or do some data analysis, you're gonna have to put in the figures and tables manually into the paper. So that's a lot of work. With the R Markdown, with the Papaya, the huge advantage of this is that everything is the code, the figures and everything are dynamically generated. The results of the code and the figures are dynamically generated when you're, preparing the document for submission. That's a very big advantage because your data can change and then you would just recompile the file without doing any further work. You don't have to copy and paste anything. And copying and pasting is very dangerous because the potential for error is very high there. So that's it. So that's the whole tutorial on using R Markdown for writing journal articles.